On the Track is a web TV show about cryptozoology, natural history, green issues, and whatever else the team feel like making up as they go along. Enjoy!
So what's in today's show, Mr. John?
Well, Hennis, everybody says these days that the true meaning of Christmas has been forgotten. But what can be more of the true meaning of Christmas than a visit to Loch Ness with Ian Squibbs, where we talk about the one time that an enormous monster was picked up by sonar at the bottom of the lake. Trigger warning, this is not what you are expecting.
I really like the old credits.
Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is John Downs. I'm the director of the Centre for Fortean Zoology, and over there is Lilith Tinkerbell Downs, my favourite of the CFZ cats, and she thinks she's the most important anyway. Welcome to another episode of... Oh dear, I can hear sounds of distant music. Is it Elvis Costello singing I Don't Want to Go to Chelsea? No, it seems to be something a bit more enthusiastic about that particular London borough.
Hello, my dear. Are there any festive celebrations taking place at St. Wedderburn School? Yes, there most definitely is. We are going to be sprinkling the powder of Ibn Ghazi in our eyes so that we may see our god, Yog-Sothoth, who manifests as a great conglomeration of enormous glowing spheres. Then, when we have perceived his countenance, we're going to commit a human sacrifice in his honour, and then there will be feasting and animalistic debauchery, all in the name of Yog-Sothoth. Yog-Sothoth, the gate and the key.
Thank you for that, Helga. It gives me hope for the future of our great country that a young lady or an pendek like you is encouraged to believe, to pray and to worship. Things like that really give me hope for the future of Britain. Now, starting again, my name is John Downs. I'm the director of the Centre for Fortean Zoology, and welcome to another episode of On the Track. For those of you who don't know, every Wednesday evening at 6:30 and every Saturday afternoon at 3, we bring you a mixture, a mélange, a mishmash, and what else begins with M, Richard?
Macropods.
I don't know what kangaroos and wallabies have to do with what I'm trying to say, and they have nothing to do with this show, at least not this episode anyway, except they come from Australia. And that is where the main subject of today's show took place. Every Wednesday evening and every Saturday afternoon we bring you all sorts of things beginning with M, which consist of hard science, weird shit, and surreality. What's surreality, Richard?
Pussycat, pussycat, where have you been? I've been to Wilko's to buy some linoleum. Pussycat, pussycat, what did you there? Nothing, because they've gone into receivership.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and as you all know, it's the season to be jolly. and I'm now going to be jolly before we start the show. It was the show before Christmas, and along with his nibs, not a creature was stirring except Ian Squibbs.
Hello, John, and happy Christmas
And
to all.
same to you, dear boy, same to you.
Well, it's good to be back on CFZ TV for more mystery and history. So today, the game is afoot, as we're going to have a look at the 1970 cinematic classic, The Private Life of Sherlock Holmes, and its relevance, coincidences, and possible predictions in relation to the modern mystery of Loch Ness. So let's see what we've got. Sherlock Holmes is the most adapted character in film and television history, with more portrayals of the fictional detective than any other character, closely followed by Dracula. From the early days of cinema, the Conan Doyle classic have been brought to life on the big screen, much to the delight of young and old alike. As time went on, though, the Sherlock Holmes films would take on a variety of guises, often straying away from the original Conan Doyle stories. Some films would put Holmes in a modern-day setting. Others would take a comedic look at the character. Some films would address his weaknesses and drug addiction, whilst others even saw him solve the case of Jack the Ripper. One such film of this genre is The Private Life of Sherlock Holmes, which was directed by Oscar-winning filmmaker Billy Wilder. It was released in 1970, and in many critics' opinion, including my own, it is a true classic. So yeah. Have you seen the film, John? Are you familiar with this
Yes.
this film? Yes, it
Yes,
is
of course.
it is a delight. I much prefer this to that Benedict guy and Tim from The Office as Watson. But anyway, that's just my thing. Anyway, The Private Life of Sherlock Holmes is a big production, and this is evident with its lavish sets and location settings. The film's original runtime was 3 hours 20 minutes, but it was heavily cut for cinematic release. Shakespearean actor Robert Stevens plays the part of Holmes, and noted character actor Colin Blakely is Watson. Dracula and Lord Summerisle actor Christopher Lee plays the part of Sherlock's brother, Mycroft, and English comedy actress Irene Handel plays Mrs. Hudson. The soundtrack by Hungarian composer Miklos Rozsa is first class. The film starts in modern-day London in a bank vault where an unpublished manuscript written by Watson is uncovered. The document states that aside from the 60 published accounts of the cases tackled by Sherlock Holmes, there were other adventures that for reasons of discretion have been withheld from the public until a much later date. They involve matters of a delicate and somewhat scandalous nature, as will shortly become apparent. The film then plays out the contents of the manuscript. Holmes and Watson take on the case of a beautiful woman whose husband had vanished. The investigation takes many twists and turns and involves 6 missing dwarfs, villainous monks, the Russian National Ballet, covert naval experiments, and the Loch Ness Monster. Though the film is a comedy, it accurately references the original Conan Doyle stories and is respectful in that way, though it looks at these traits from a different angle. For example, Holmes doesn't like wearing the deer stalker and cape, which we are all familiar with, but he has to because that's how the illustrator depicts him in the Strand magazine, and the public expects him to look like that, so he complies. The film goes on to question Holmes's sexuality and makes no secret of his drug addiction. A large section of the film is set on location at Loch Ness, and stunning views of the loch and Urquhart Castle can be seen. And this is the section of the film that has the Fortean connection, and we're gonna focus on this. So, with the film being set at Loch Ness, inevitably Holmes and Watson encounter the monster. The beast first encounters when they are out on the boat on the loch. So, the monster collides with the boat, and Watson fends off the creature with an oar. This sequence was filmed in 1969. So let's just pause there, because that's interesting. Because what else happened in 1969 on a Scottish loch? Any idea? Where a creature was fended off with an oar? Interesting, huh?
Oh,
Okay,
Loch
let
wasn't
me
it?
tell you if you don't know. Yeah, exactly, yes, well done, John. A point to you. In August 1969, Duncan MacDonald and William Simpson were out on a boat on Loch Morar when a large creature collided with their vessel. MacDonald fended off the beast with an oar, in the same way that Watson does in the private life of Sherlock Holmes, and thus bringing attention to the Loch Morar monster and establishing the location as a lake monster haunt. So, was director Billy Wilder aware of the MacDonald-Simpson story and decided to incorporate it into his film? Or was this just coincidence? We don't know, and we're not gonna know, because Billy Wilder passed away in 2002. So, okay then. The film was made before the days of CGI. So, if you wanted to have a full-size monster in your movie, then you had to make a full-size monster rather than do it on a computer like you would today. Talented special effects artist Wally Vivers was commissioned to create a full-size Loch Ness monster to be used in the movie. Vivers' other work included special effects for 2001, A Space Odyssey, Superman, and Local Hero. For The Private Life of Sherlock Holmes, Vivers made a 30-foot-long model of the Loch Ness Monster, which consisted of head, neck, and 2 humps. The creation was then floated on the loch, ready for filming, and we can see some rare behind the film's photos of the construction of the prop, which we got there. We just have a look at those. There we go. It's nice. And also we can see a picture also of the finished model being floated on the loch itself. So yes, a look behind the scenes there. Director Billy Wilder did not like the look of the 2 humps at the back of the completed monster, so he ordered them to be removed. He was warned that taking the humps away would affect the prop's buoyancy, but he was insistent and the humps were removed. The prop then sank to the bottom of the loch whilst being towed behind a boat across Urquhart Bay. So, Wilder is said to have comforted Vivers after watching his creation disappear beneath the waves. All that work for nothing. The incident, along with lighting problems, made filming on the loch difficult. Wilder had to reassess things. A new monster prop was made, but this time just the head and neck, and filming was moved away from Loch Ness to a large water tank in a film studio. So that was the more sensible option. So, okay, so there you go. So what happened to the original movie prop? It was never retrieved, and no doubt what rotted away over the years on the bottom of the loch, long to be forgotten. So there we go. However, excuse me, it's Christmas. In April 2016, Norwegian company Kongsberg Maritime carried out a detailed survey of the bottom of Loch Ness in conjunction with Visit Scotland and leader of the Loch Ness and Morar project, Adrian Shine. To carry out the survey, an underwater sonar robotic drone called Moonin was deployed. Mooning had previously been used to search for downed planes, and we can see a collage of Mooning in action in the next image there. We got Mooning, a nice orange torpedo-like device, scanning the bottom of the loch there, and some nice shots there. During the 2-week survey of the hidden depths of the loch, Mooning found an 8-meter-long shipwreck at the bottom of the loch, the origin of which was unknown, and which we can actually see a scan of that image. Look at that next picture, number 6 there. There we go. That's what it picked up. The drone also located a crashed Second World War Wellington bomber, a 100-year-old Zulu-class fishing vessel, and parts of John Cobb's speed record attempt craft Crusader, which crashed when it was doing over 200 miles an hour in 1952, killing Mr. Cobb in the process. Along with these discoveries, the sonar picked up the image of a long-necked object on the floor of the loch. It became apparent that this object was the long-lost prop from the private life of Sherlock Holmes, which sank almost 50 years before. And we can actually see the sonar image of the prop, which was picked up. So we look at the next image there. We got those two, and yes, definitely a long-necked object on the bottom of the loch there. The head seems to have disappeared, but the neck and the body are still present. Adrian Shine said of the find that the team had been looking for a trench called Nessie's Lair, a long topographical feature which turned out not to exist. However, in transit to that location, the robot found an outline with a long neck and a large body about 10 meters long, and it indeed proved to be the Loch Ness Monster. But it is a Loch Ness Monster constructed for a film in 1969. Shine said at a weight of 4 tons, the model was too heavy to drag to the surface, but he is convinced by its origin. The imagery is totally convincing. The measurements are precise, he said. Kongsberg's Craig Wallace said the vehicle is providing an insight to the loch's depths as never before imagined. Finding Nessie was, of course, an unexpected bonus. So there you go. The prop was discovered all those years later. So nice. All right. So let's go back to the private life of Sherlock Holmes. So Holmes and Watson encountered the Loch Ness Monster, but did they solve the mystery? So in a way, they do. And again, what we see in the film has comparisons to what was to come in the real life mystery. Spoilers coming up for those of you who haven't seen the movie. Okay then. The monster that Holmes and Watson encounter turns out to be a pre-World War I submarine being tested for secret experiments by the British Navy. A monster head and neck was attached to the conning tower of the vehicle to disguise the submarine as the Loch Ness Monster. And we can actually see an image of the craft there. We just had the next picture there. We've actually got what it looks like. That's the what was seen in the films. There's the submarine and the head and neck of the monster attached to the top. All right. So again, does this sound familiar? A submarine with the head and neck of a monster attached to the conning tower, made to look like the Loch Ness Monster. Anyone?
Good Lord.
Yeah. Okay then. Yeah, I think we know, John. Well, let's see then. All right then.
I've not
In
thought,
1933, beg your pardon, John?
I've not thought of that.
Yes. Exactly. It's something I noticed in the film. But in 1933, yeah. Okay. Let's see what the coincidence is, though. In 1933, the world was aghast when they saw the surgeon's photo. And we can have a look at the image. We've all seen it many times, but let's have a look there. Look at the next picture. That's the surgeon's photo, of course. The photo shows the head and neck of what is supposedly the Loch Ness Monster on the surface of the loch. London gynecologist R.K. Wilson claimed to have taken the photo, and it not only went on to become the definitive image of the Loch Ness Monster, It has since become one of the most well-known photographic images in the world, engraving itself into popular culture to the point that it can be seen in TV programs such as The Simpsons and Scooby-Doo. We can actually have a look at a clip there of Scooby-Doo and his Velma reading a magazine, and what's that on the front? The surgeon's photo. It's even got into this, so it's amazing. But unfortunately, in 1993, the photo was finally debunked after 60 years of it being regarded as the best evidence for the existence of the Loch Ness monster, shattering the dreams of many monster hunters. The monster in the photo was in fact a small model of a head and neck positioned on the conning tower of a toy submarine. The object was then floated on the loch, photographed and presented to the world as proof for the existence of the monster. And if we look at the next image here, we can actually see a mock-up of how this would have been done. You see Nessie made from plastic wood, the neck attached to a 14-inch toy submarine. So the person behind the hoax was big game hunter Marmaduke Wetherell, who had previously faked Nessie footprints using a dried hippo foot. And you can see Wetherell there in the next image. So, in the private life of Sherlock Holmes, exactly the same method to hoax the monster was used, just on a bigger scale. And it was over 20 years later when the facts about the surgeon's photo hoax finally became public. So then, coincidence? Was Billy Wilder aware of the truth behind the surgeon's photo and decided to incorporate it into his film? Probably not. It was more likely a coincidence. So, but anyway, whilst faking the surgeon's photo, the perpetrators apparently sank the model in the loch after they had photographed it. So I suppose it's still laying on the loch floor waiting to be discovered in the same way that the movie prop was all those years later. So we can only hope. So there we go. And also I've done a side-by-side comparison of the surgeon's photo setup and the Sherlock Holmes submarine. So if we look at the next image, you've got side by side, and we just see how similar the two things were. So there we go. There you have the private life of Sherlock Holmes and its interesting links to the Loch Ness monster. Conan Doyle himself steered clear of mythical beasts and the supernatural in the original Sherlock Holmes stories. Some of the stories did head in that direction. For example, The Hound of the Baskervilles and The Adventure of the Sussex Vampire. But in the end, the tales have a rational explanation. The Hound of the Baskervilles is clearly inspired by centuries-old phantom black dog legends. The story is seeped in mystery and atmosphere, only to disappoint the reader by revealing that the Hound from Hell is in fact a regular dog with phosphorus painted on it, so it glows in the dark and it ends up getting shot and killed by Holmes and Watson. Maybe Conan Doyle felt it was wise to keep the supernatural and the fantastical away from his most famous creation, as such things have no place in the world of logic and lateral deduction of Holmes. When you eliminate the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth. However, Conan Doyle did produce ghost stories in his other writings and wrote one of the first tales of an Egyptian mummy rising from the dead. Conan Doyle himself was carried away in the Victorian spiritualism boom and was taken in by the whole thing. This was unusual as he was a man of science and practiced as a doctor before becoming a full-time writer. Having lost his first wife and his son when they were young to tuberculosis and pneumonia respectively, perhaps drove Conan Doyle to attend seances and the like in a desperate attempt to contact them. A blight on Conan Doyle's record was his belief in the cotton leaf fairies and the clearly faked photos by two young girls. He even wrote a book about it called The Coming of the Fairies, and we can see a copy of that, if we can see that book. Bit disappointing of the great man, and I don't think I'd be taken in by that, but anyway, it was a different time. So let's finish off with a short tale which I recently discovered, and I'm surprised is not more widely known, and we don't have more information about. And it goes as follows. In 1928, Conan Doyle and his wife took a sea voyage to the island of Aegina. Standing on the deck of a steamer, they were gazing at the ancient temple of Poseidon, god of the sea, on Cape Sunion. Suddenly, they were distracted by a strange creature swimming parallel to the ship. Conan Doyle recalled that the creature had a long neck and large flippers. I believe, as my wife, that this was a young plesiosaurus. So I've tried to find out more about that story, but there's not a lot out there. And you'd think that such a prominent figure seeing a plesiosaur would be more publicised. But anyway, Conan Doyle may well have seen a long-necked sea serpent. But it's worth noting that shortly after Conan Doyle's sighting, he released the book The Maricot Deep, which features a long-necked sea creature. Could his sighting have been a crude way of trying to promote his book? Some theories suggest. Well, this is interesting as well, John. Some theories suggest that Conan Doyle was responsible for the Piltdown Man hoax in 1912, where skull fragments were discovered in Piltdown, England, supposedly from an unknown early human, suggesting a missing link between apes and man. After analysis, some years later, it was revealed that the bones were an amalgamation of human and ape bones created by a prankster to fool the public. The perpetrator of the hoax has never been revealed. A few months after the discovery of Piltdown Man, Conan Doyle published his novel, The Lost World. In the novel, a prehistoric world is discovered in modern times, consisting of prehistoric animals, including ape men. Was Conan Doyle up to his tricks again with the sea serpent sighting? We will never know. So, on that note, we come to an end, and, as usual, whenever we discuss the mystery of Loch Ness and the like, we are left with more questions than answers. Why did it take so long to find the missing film prop? Was Billy Wilder aware of the McDonald Simpson Lochmara encounter and weave it into his film, or was it just coincidence? Did Wilder know the real story behind the surgeon's photo and use it as inspiration for his submarine? Will a scan of the loch one day stumble upon the model that is the surgeon's photo? And did Conan Doyle really witness a sea serpent, or did he make it up? Maybe we will always be in the dark on these matters. Or are the answers to these questions elementary? Thank you.
If you want to support us and help us make more content like these, please press like, subscribe, follow our Facebook page and check out our Patreon.
And there's the ghost of Joe Strummer, who's an ever more regular visitor to my little house, will tell you.
Don't forget to ring the notification bell, otherwise you won't be told when the next episode's gonna be.
And that would be an awful pity, wouldn't it?
If you've been affected by any of the topics in today's episode, you can just bugger off, because we don't give a monkeys. Bloody well get a grip. Sort your own bloody problems out rather than ringing up somewhere.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, here we are at the end of another episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I want to say a big thank you to everybody who has helped with this episode, particularly my producer Louis, to Richard Freeman, and I also want to say much love And best wishes and healing vibes go out from all of us to Miss Maxine, who's seriously ill in hospital now. I also want to say thank you to our guest this week, Ian Squibbs, who is a remarkable fellow, and I'm sure he's going to be back with us in the new year. And to remind you that in 7 days' time I'll be back with the New Year episode of this remarkable little web TV show. And I want now, before we go, to hand you over with the famous words of Charles Dickens over to Rossiter St. Griffin.